The cane and the slipper. Corporal punishment. Corporal punishment wasn't hidden or controversial in 1970s schools. It was policy. The cane for serious offences like fighting or repeated disobedience, the slipper or wooden ruler for talking back or forgetting homework. Some teachers kept their weapons propped against the blackboard as a reminder. The ritual mattered as much as the pain. You'd be sent to the headmaster's office, told to wait outside, knowing what was coming. Then the door would open, you'd step inside, and it was over in seconds. 3 strikes across the palm or backside, sharp enough to sting for hours. Some kids cried, most didn't, because that made it worse next time. Parents mostly backed it. If you got the cane at school, you get it again at home, was common logic. Teachers had authority that didn't need justifying. It started phasing out in the early 1980s, not because of sudden enlightenment, but because lawsuits and changing attitudes slowly made it untenable. Some schools kept using it quietly until the official ban in 1986. The chalkboard and dust clouds. Chalk dust wasn't the problem everyone claims it was. Most people didn't even notice it until years later when someone mentioned asthma rates or respiratory complaints that never got properly tracked. The blackboards dominated every classroom, stretching wall to wall, and teachers wrote across them in looping cursive or block capitals depending on their mood. The chalk sticks wearing down to nubs that scratched rather than glided, which made that horrible squeaking sound that could stop a conversation mid-sentence. Cleaning them was a daily job, usually given to whichever kid had misbehaved or volunteered out of boredom, and the wooden-backed erasers, felt on one side, dense and heavy, had to be clapped outside against the brick wall, sending clouds of white powder into the air that settled on blazers, desks, hair, everything. Teachers had permanently dusted shoulders, like they'd been working in a flour mill. And some classrooms by Friday afternoon had a fine layer coating the windowsills that nobody bothered wiping until the caretaker came through over the weekend. The coloured chalks, red for corrections, yellow for emphasis, lasted longer because they were used less, though whether that actually made them better quality or just less necessary is anyone's guess. And did anyone ever actually measure how much dust a single classroom produced in a year, or did it just seem normal because nothing else existed yet? Ink monitors and fountain pens. Ballpoint pens were invented in 1938, yet British schools still banned them 30 years later because someone decided fountain pens built character. Everyone had to use them. Ink monitors, usually the most trusted kids, which meant the ones who didn't mess about, refilled ceramic inkwells from large glass bottles every Monday morning. Careful not to spill because the stains never came out of wooden desks or uniform sleeves. Cartridges leaked constantly. You'd reach into your blazer pocket for a pen and find blue fingers, blue lining, sometimes blue spreading through to your shirt. And teachers acted like this was your fault for not being careful enough, even though the cartridges were cheap and poorly sealed and everyone knew it. Cursive was mandatory. Printing wasn't proper writing. The reasoning was always vague. Something about discipline, neatness, tradition, but mostly it seemed like schools were just stubborn about admitting Biros worked better. Some teachers kept using fountain pens themselves well into the 1980s, as if holding on to the old method proved something about standards. Though what exactly those standards were protecting became harder to explain once everyone admitted the new pens didn't leak, didn't blot, and actually let you write without stopping every few lines to refill. By the mid-70s, the rules quietly loosened. Ballpoints appeared, no announcement. The overhead projector. The bulb burned at 400 watts, hot enough that you could feel the heat radiating from the glass plate if you stood close. Teachers wheeled the overhead projector in on a metal trolley like it was delicate equipment, which it was. Cost about $200 new in the mid-70s, which was serious money for a school budget. They'd place it at the front, angle it toward the wall or pull-down screen, then fiddle with the focus knob until the projected image sharpened. Acetate sheets came next. Clear plastic, special pens. The teacher would write live, their handwriting enlarged and slightly distorted on the wall behind them, and you'd watch their hand move across the projector surface in real time, which felt oddly intimate, like seeing someone's thoughts form. Some teachers prepared sheets in advance with diagrams or notes, others improvised, crossing things out, layering sheets for comparison. The bulb died mid-lesson sometimes, just a pop, then darkness. Replacement bulbs were expensive, so projectors sat unused for weeks waiting for budget approval. Schools in the 1960s used film strips and slide projectors for visual aids, which required darkened rooms and advanced planning. But the overhead projector let teachers adapt on the spot, which is probably why it stuck around until interactive whiteboards replaced it in the 2000s. Turning off the classroom lights was the highest honor. Everyone wanted that job. The projector beam cutting through the dim room, dust particles swirling in the light. Morning assembly and hymns. People act like morning assembly was optional, or that schools respected religious diversity back then. They didn't. Every morning, the entire school filed into the hall and stood in rows organized by class, youngest at the front, oldest at the back, and you sang hymns whether you believed in God or not, because opting out wasn't a concept anyone had invented yet. The law technically required it. The 1944 Education Act mandated daily Christian worship in state schools, though how strictly that was interpreted varied, and some sources claim schools treated it more as tradition than religious obligation, while others insist it was taken seriously. So the experience probably differed depending on whether your head was devout or just going through the motions. The hymns rotated through the same tired list, all things bright and beautiful, Lord of the dance, morning has broken, maybe he who would valiant be if someone felt ambitious. Teachers stood along the sides, half watching, half supervising, and a piano accompanied everything, badly usually, because the music teacher was the only one who could play, and they weren't always available, which meant off-key singing echoing through a drafty hall with wooden floors that creaked when anyone shifted weight. The headmaster's lecture followed, announcements, scolding about behavior, reminders about upcoming events, and then everyone filed out to first period. By the 1980s, schools started allowing non-Christian families to excuse their kids, though most didn't bother. The 1988 Education Reform Act reinforced the Christian requirement, which stayed until multi-faith assemblies gradually replaced it in the 1990s. Milk break and school dinners. School dinners worked like prison meals, except prisons probably had better portions. Every kid got the same plate, no choices, no alternatives. And if you didn't like what was served, you either ate it anyway or went hungry until home time, which sounds harsh now, but felt completely normal then, because the whole system ran on the assumption that children would eat when they were hungry enough, and complaining was just noise to be ignored. The milk came first, mid-morning, delivered in crates of small glass bottles with foil caps that you'd pierce with a paper straw, trying not to spray milk across the desk or your uniform. Though by 10:30 on a sunny day, the bottles had been sitting in the corridor long enough to turn lukewarm and slightly sour, which made drinking it feel like a test of willpower rather than refreshment. Then lunch. Dinner ladies, always women, always wearing hairnets and pale blue overalls, served proper food: meat, vegetables, suet pudding with jam, lumpy custard that formed a skin if you left it too long. Turkey Twizzlers didn't exist yet. Processed food was still a novelty, not the default. Everything tasted institutional. Boiled. Slightly grey. You couldn't claim allergies or preferences, those concepts hadn't been medicalized yet, or maybe they had, but schools didn't care, and if you said you didn't like carrots, the dinner lady would tell you to eat them anyway, because children in other countries were starving, which somehow made sense as logic, even though it obviously didn't. The portions were massive, though, weirdly generous considering how stingy everything else felt, so maybe nobody went hungry after all. The paper register and detention slips. Why did anyone think handwritten registers were secure? Teachers called names twice a day from cloth-bound books with ruled columns, morning registration, afternoon registration, and you'd answer present miss or here sir depending on the teacher's preference, which some were surprisingly particular about. The registers were filled in with fountain pen or ballpoint, marks for present, absent, late, and if someone was missing 3 days running, the office would send a letter home asking why, though enforcement was patchy and plenty of kids skipped without consequences. Detention slips were carbon copy, pink or yellow. One for you, one for your parents. The teacher filled them out by hand. Name, date, reason, time to report. And you were supposed to take both copies home, get a parent to sign the duplicate, and return it the next day as proof they'd been informed. Obviously, kids just threw them away, or signed them themselves, or claimed they'd lost it. Some parents never saw a single detention slip their kid actually received, which made the whole system pointless, though schools kept using them anyway because what else were they going to do? Call every parent individually. There's a story about one school that tried pre-numbered slips to track them but gave up after a term because admin couldn't be bothered. By the 1990s, schools started phoning parents directly. The paper trail became a backup, not the primary system. PE kits and outdoor cross-country, rain or shine. PE in the 1970s was designed to make you uncomfortable on purpose. Cross-country runs happened every winter. January mornings with frost still on the grass and you wore shorts and a t-shirt regardless of temperature, because it builds character, which was code for we don't care if you're cold. Teachers stood at the finish line in tracksuits and coats, stopwatches in hand, while kids ran circuits around muddy fields or through nearby woods, legs turning red from wind chill, fingers numb, breath visible in clouds. Some schools made it competitive. Others just wanted you moving for 30 minutes. The showers afterward were communal, open room, multiple heads, no privacy, which nobody wanted, but everyone had to use because turning up to the next lesson covered in mud wasn't acceptable, and the whole experience felt designed to strip away any sense of modesty or personal space. Though teachers framed it as practical hygiene rather than social conditioning. Inside the gym, climbing ropes that reached the ceiling, wooden benches for vaulting, wall bars for stretching, medicine balls that actually hurt when thrown. Forgot your kid. You did PE in your pants and vest, no exceptions, standing there in underwear while everyone else wore proper shorts, which was humiliating but also the point. Forget once, never forget again, a lesson learned through public embarrassment that somehow passed as reasonable discipline back then, because physical discomfort and shame were just tools in the educational toolkit. Unremarkable and unquestioned.